Hi, paraprofessionals. I hope you're all doing well and everybody is being safe. I am welcoming you into our inclusion strand, year 3, day 3. We're going to be putting everything together. So that means that within this section, we're actually taking all 3 years and putting it into together as a review. When you go through the inclusion strand, you're going to see that it's broken up into 4 sections. My partner, Gina Bongiovanni, is actually going to be taking sections 2 and 4, and I will be taking sections 1 and 3. As we go through each section should last about 10 to maybe 12 minutes. At the end of each section, you will be given a code word. With that code word, you are going to use that to answer questions on a show what you know form. The code word is very important. You need to put in the code word first and then answer the questions. There are about 2 to 3 questions per show what you know. So please do not stress. This is not a test. This is not a quiz. We just wanted to make sure that we could provide some interaction for you instead of watching a continuous video for at least an hour. So again, the section of inclusion is broken into 4 sections. At the end of each section, you will be given a code word, and you will need that code word to complete the show what you know form. All right, so let's get started, and we're going to talk about inclusion. Remember, when we're talking about inclusion, inclusion is a service and not a place. So just because a student is placed into a general ed classroom does not mean that that's inclusion. Inclusion takes many parts and takes a lot of planning. Everything needs to be teamwork, and we have lots of goals for inclusion. So we all have to work together to make sure that inclusion works and meets the needs of our students. Our students are coming in with IEPs, and that's Individual Education Plan. Within those IEPs, there are specially designed instruction, or SDIs. Under those SDIs, we have accommodations. Those accommodations are what's really important when we're talking about inclusion and what our students need to be successful within an inclusive setting. Inclusion doesn't just necessarily talk about gen ed classrooms. We have to look at across all settings and how our students can be successful. That includes if we're looking at recess, we're looking at transitions within the hallways, specials, lunch, waiting in the lunch line. Maybe if they have to go to a place where they have to wait to catch the bus. And what does that look like? Going to lockers. All of those pieces need to take into consideration when we're looking at inclusion and what our students need to be successful. On the screen, you can see many goals for inclusion. I'm just going to pick out a couple. Of course, you're going to have the instruction. You're going to have someone in the gen ed classroom, the gen ed teacher, who knows about a certain topic, such as history. They are highly qualified to teach history. They know the topic. And of course, they're going to have that better instruction. We also want to make sure that we work together as a team. That is highly important. When we're talking about teamwork, we're talking about not just the gen ed student or this gen ed teacher. We're talking also about special ed teachers and our paraprofessionals, as well as students. Everybody has to work together as a team to make inclusions work and benefit and give our students higher self-esteem and a sense of belonging. Those two kind of go together. We want to make sure that when they come into the classroom, they're part of the class. They're not just going to be sitting in the back in a different desk or a different group because they have a disability. We want to make sure that there is a sense of belonging and that they're able to work with their peers. Again, we have to look at what does that look like and what needs and supports do our students need to have to be successful within that inclusive setting. When we're looking at FAPE, and that is free appropriate public education, everybody has the right to a public education. Everybody, no matter disability or not, everybody has the right to a free appropriate public education. And that is under supervision and direction. We go by the state standards. What do we need to have within that free and appropriate public education? What are the state standards? What do we have to make sure that is implemented? We also want to make sure that there's appropriate placement, whether it's preschool elementary, or secondary, what do we have to make sure that the placement is appropriate? And we also want to make sure that this is conforming with the IEP. Are we making sure that the IEP is being implemented to the full, as well as are our students' needs being met, and are they being successful? Under IDEA, that ensures that all children with disabilities have available to them a free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. That last piece, we want to make sure that everything is designed to meet the unique needs. That's why we have an IEP. Every IEP is unique to that student's needs, and that we're preparing them for further education, employment, and independent living. Right there is our transition grid. We need to look at where are our students planning on going? What is transition? What's the goal? We always need to keep our eye on the ball. What are our students planning on doing once they leave? Transition needs to start as soon as our students enter school. So we have to start thinking about that. Further education, employment, and independent living. Again, we have to start looking at what needs and what goals need to be put in place for our students to be successful. All of this encompasses what's going to happen in instruction. IDEA also clearly emphasizes a child's right to participate fully in the Gen Ed curriculum. We always want to make sure that when they're in the Gen Ed curriculum, that they participate, that they're not sitting back in the back of the classroom at a different table by themselves. They should be participating. And what is that going to look like? They have the right to be educated with their peers. The only time that can be changed or overruled is even if we have all the supplementary supports and services put in place, but a satisfactory FAPE cannot be achieved. Then we need to look at what other placement would be best and beneficial for our students. But they have the right to be educated with their peers. But again, that can be overruled if FAPE cannot be achieved. We also look at the least restrictive environment, which is your LRE. We always look at our Gen Ed classrooms first. That is our least restrictive environment. Is that providing the instruction they need? Is it meeting the needs of our students? Are our students being successful? So the method of providing maximum feasible integration with peers, is that occurring in the LRE or in your Gen Ed class? Again, it involves not just our regular ed classrooms, but across all settings. We have to look at recess, lunch, our specials, the bus. We have to look at, are we able to meet the needs of our students, and are they being successful? Is this placement working for them? Again, this does not mean that students can't leave the Gen Ed classroom. But however, services must meet the individual needs of the student. Again, that's why they have an IEP. That means that they have very unique individual needs, and we have to put in certain adaptations or modifications to help them be successful within the least restrictive environment. Again, that's very important when we're talking about inclusion. We have to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students and that our students are being successful. Are they getting the instruction they need? So when I'm looking at the ultimate criteria of functionality, according to Lou Brown, the ultimate test of the functionality of a specific IEP goal is to ask, if the student does not learn to do the task, will someone else have to do it for him? We all know that a lot of our students need lots of support, but we also have to remember that some of those supports need to be faded out because we are not going to be there for them when they graduate. If they go on to some type of post-secondary ed training or education, we will not be there. And post-secondary training and education is a lot different than what we are providing here in public education. Also, if they're going on to an employment, a job situation, they need to be able to perform their job. If there are certain tasks that we need to assist them with, What do we need to put in place, and what instruction needs to take place for them to be successful? Independent living. What skills do they need to be independent on their own to live in a house or in an apartment? What skills need to be taught? Because again, we will not be there for them when they graduate. And these skills need to be taught. And we have to make sure that if there's certain supports that need to be put in place as they graduate, we need to make sure that those supports are in place before they leave school. So when I'm looking at the ultimate transition strategy, if you can teach the skill, teach the skill. Break it down, make it more manageable. You might have to break it into smaller pieces, do a task analysis. And that is something that we've done over the years where I've given you a skill and you need to break it down, make it smaller, make it more manageable. But if you can teach it, teach the skill. If I can't teach the skill, how do I adapt it? What do I need to do? And what other skills maybe do I have to teach them to put things in place? If you can't adapt the skill, find some way around it. So if that skill is not something that they are going to acquire, then what do we need to do to make sure that they're going to be successful? All of these pieces need to work together when I'm thinking about what skills do our students need and how am I going to teach it or how am I going to adapt it? Again, we do a lot of verbal prompting. We tell our students what to do and when to do it. And again, we will not be there when they graduate. So what do I need to do to put in place? Maybe teach them how to use a visual checklist, a visual daily calendar, so they know this is what I am doing today. Because nobody's going to tell me I need to get up at 5:50 because I got to catch a bus by 6:30. Those are all skills that need to be taught. But again, what do we need to put in place for our students to be successful? And last, if I can't find some way around it, how do I teach others to cope? There might be a skill that a student will never learn. And we have tried to teach it, and it is very difficult. So what do we need to do to teach others how to cope with that? As adults, we need to make sure that we are able to accommodate for people maybe we work with, people we live with. So how do I cope with someone's disability? What do I need to be taught so I can assist them or so I can help them? All right, we have come to the end of section 1. So now you will be moving on to a show what you know. The code word for section 1 is spring. Remember, you need to be able to put the code word in first on the show what you know form and then answer. There could be 2, there could be 3 questions for each section. Once you've finished your show what you know, you will hit submit down at the bottom. Again, the code word for section 1 is spring. Thank you.